Welcome. Happy and merry solstice to you. Entering in a new season, winter time officially for those in the northern hemisphere, and summertime in the southern hemisphere. Lucky you. But regardless, we enter the season of Capricorn birthdays. Happy birthday to all the Capricorns out there. Celebrate, because this is the first birthday since 2008 where Pluto isn't in your sign. And that should be a cause for celebration. And for many ways, for some, they've been waiting for this to happen for a long time. Others, the amount of wisdom and knowledge that you have all picked up from that transit. Okay, so saying that, I'm going to talk about some of the important dates in the upcoming week here. And then at the end, I'll tell you some personal things, scheduling, and what I'm working on behind the scenes here. Okay, so let's start here. We started today at 1:20 a.m. Pacific time. The sun entered Capricorn, and we are currently moving from a Virgo moon into a Libra moon that has happened already here on that will actually happen on Sunday the 22nd Pacific time. The moon will go into Libra at 11:07 a.m. This is interesting for those who are Aries Libra people, because of the eclipse cycle that's been happening in the signs of Aries and Libra for the last year and a half. And we are winding down with the story. The moon in Libra will touch upon those themes specifically for these people, and I think specifically for those who might have birthdays within the first couple days of Aries and Libra, or you have planets there. The moon will move through and touch the node, be opposite the nodes, etc. We get on the Monday the 23rd. That sun in Capricorn will actually square the north node in Aries, with the moon being around in Libra. So we kind of have a tense mutable cardinal T-square. So those signs are directly affected, more so the Aries and Libra peeps, right? And when we get to later on the day on Monday the 23rd, Venus in Aquarius will make her opportunistic sextile aspect to Chiron in Aries. I think this is the go-to place, at least for the weekend and into Monday while the moon's in Libra, that Venus in Aquarius gives space for Chiron in Aries to speak its mind and be itself in whatever way. And air and fire get together here, and they're actually stimulated here. And so Venus in Aquarius is just so good at accepting whoever they're running into at face value and giving them the space to be who they are. In this case, it's Chiron in Aries, wounds and all, but with strength because of those wounds. And soon here, very soon, Chiron will not be retrograde anymore and move forward. Good moment, actually, I think, here, in a good place to deal with the cardinal tension that happens. When we get to the 24th, which Pacific time, which is Christmas Eve for many people who celebrate that. I'm more of a solstice person, Yule person. But it happens, we deal with the moon still being in Libra. And then we have an interesting aspect. Well, it's more than interesting. It's one of the biggest aspects, I think, of the past year. And this has to do with Jupiter and Gemini square Saturn and Pisces. You've heard me talk about these on my videos and other places. This is the second Jupiter Saturn square that has occurred. We had the first one here at the end of summer. At that point, Saturn in Pisces was retrograde, and Jupiter was steaming along, moving along in Gemini and pushing the mercurial Gemini ways of being, and thoughts on fire, elevated, pushing out towards its boundaries, multiple thought scenarios, multiple ideas, multiple juggling of communications and words, and all the things that Gemini rules. And here we are at the major second marking point, and there's really three big ones. The first one we had here earlier this year, and then this one, it happens on the 24th, and then this will happen again with Jupiter and Saturn squaring off with each other in the beginning of summer. And that's interesting because that will actually happen in two different signs. So here is a massive marking point. If you have major mutable planets in your chart, so you basically have, you got Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Pisces, you've been affected by this. The last 2 months has been a massive mutable story because of the Mercury retrograde that happened in Sagittarius. Now Mercury's been moving forward here for about a week now, but it is kind of heralding and bringing these themes of Jupiter and Gemini wanting to push out and multiply upon the thought patterns and communications and how one forms their ideas and their opinions and how that comes out, right? And Mercury in Sagittarius is the philosophical approach, the truth-seeking approach, or the pontification approach. It's also the exploration approach. And when Mutable is exploring, and let's say Jupiter is trying to push it, it can go overboard. And I think it actually has. And it's at this point where Saturn, who in the background has been telling and trying to show Jupiter that it needs structure and discipline and rules in order to have its vision attained, because Jupiter wants to push its vision to seek out something, shoot for that star. Saturn here puts the clamp down, and it's a lot of times Jupiter's dealing with expansion and growth. Saturn's always dealing with rules, suppression, or trimming the fat, let's say, cutting it back. So there's that kind of thing. There's the other ways where Jupiter wants to constantly move and ascend, and Saturn brings it all in, or wants to, and it's sometimes cynical in its approach because of past experiences. And in order to have certain visions be attained, Saturn wants to bring limits and limitation and discipline. So it depends on your own philosophy and how this works for you. But it's a major marking point here on Tuesday. We're dealing at 1:59 p.m. Pacific that this happens, but this has been in the background really happening, honestly, since June. And there's been other planets that come along the way to trigger this storyline. Mercury's been the one here for the last month and a half, okay? So I don't want you to let this pass by. Sometimes with Saturnian situations, it's very difficult what Saturn brings, and there's no running away from that. There's no candying that over, one has to understand what that means in their life. I am one to accept that reality, but I'm also the type of Saturnian astrologer that will look at to see if the limitations and the rules and the discipline that Saturn brings is for the better. And if it's that type of situation, you want to apply that, and you want to work on that, and you want to accept those limitations. Anything that Saturn brings a lot of the times is a temporary rule set. And here, Jupiter and Gemini, I think, learned a deep lesson here, and has been. And thankfully, Mercury in Sagittarius is moving forward now after its retrograde cycle, that it could take the lessons that it learned during that and apply this to the Jupiter Saturn square that's happening. Remember, there's the lofty ideas, the lofty way of being of Jupiter. Saturn always crystallizes in the end, will always bring true reality to any situation. And if you want to look at this as a disciplined ritual, that at this midpoint of a major Jupiter-Saturn story here that goes all the way till next June, take this moment to slow down, look at where the Gemini and the Pisces part of your chart is and how they're relating to each other. And if you notice that things are blown out boundary-wise, or they're scattered, mutably scattered, we want to go look at the Pisces part of your chart and bring the discipline from that area and try to connect it to the Gemini part of your chart, okay? So that's one way of looking at this. I think down the line, this plays out in other ways when we get into the new year, and I'll talk about it on other videos. I, in particular, am affected by this, and I love it because in the end, I know that hard work and focus and reality truly drives everything in the end, right? And accepting that, to me, gives me a playing field and a structure to attain the Jupiter goal. And that's what we want inherently, right? So take what you want with that, accept it. And for those that will be on Christmas Eve, 1:59 p.m., so on and so forth. We get into 25th, which is a Wednesday Pacific. The moon's going to go into Scorpio at this point. I always dig the Scorpio moon when it goes in there. Never want to be on the wrong side of a Scorpio moon. But I also appreciate the intensity and the intimacy that a Scorpio moon can bring during the holidays. It will make several aspects. One to Mars, so it could be a little volatile here Wednesday and Thursday. When we get into Thursday, I think here, well, I know, by the way, I'm just going to stop here. I think is a Gemini way, and then I know is a Sagittarius way. So the process between I think and I know is very important here for the last couple of months. And part of the Jupiter Saturn Square, and part of what is we build up to an exact point here on the 26th, which is Mercury in Sagittarius will have its third opposition to the Jupiter and Gemini. There's been two other times this happened. Mercury, before it went retrograde, was opposite Jupiter, and those two were pushing off each other. That's when everyone's mind's blown out. They're probably still blown out for some of you who are mutable. And it did it again during the retrograde, and it's doing it again now for the third time. Here, a lot of times when we deal with astrological aspects, when there's 3 hits in a certain cycle, we can start to apply what we learned during the first 2 parts, right? Now, interestingly enough, it just so happens that this day 2 is the Mercury is not only opposite Jupiter, but it's squared Saturn, right? So you could see what's happening this week. We have this culminating place with the Jupiter Saturn Square that's happening, and Mercury's the player showing how it's playing out. So Mercury will be squaring Saturn at 11:28 Pacific p.m. Pacific that day on Thursday, but we're building towards that this week. Basically, Mercury is still feels the dream that's alive by Jupiter and Gemini, right? So they've acquired the knowledge in the last month and a half, and it wants to do something with it. But Saturn here at the same time is like, remember what you learned, remember the mantras and the rituals that I told you, and the discipline and the rules and the limitations that you'll need in order to get your vision attained. And Mercury here is at this gut check place. And it just depends on who you are. It depends on where this is for you. Remember, I talked about this Gemini part of your chart and the Pisces part of your chart, and how they're trying to work together, or it's very tension-filled between the two. And here comes Mercury and Sagittarius coming out of the retrograde that's connected to all this and can actually do and utilize not only what it's thought about or what it's thinking about, but has finally maybe come to a place after the retrograde of like, oh, I know what is true and what's not true. I know what can work and what will not work. I'm not just shooting off lofty ideas. I actually crashed and burned a couple times, and I did some calculations. And Saturn, you're helping me with this actually to give these calculations some form, right? So it's an interesting week when it comes to the Jupiter Saturn Square, and I think one can find solutions and at least lay out a bit of a roadmap for the next 6 months here in those mutable parts of your chart. Lots to say. I could keep talking about that. On the 27th Friday, then we have the moon go into Sagittarius, right? It's going to eventually make a connection to Mercury in the next couple days after that, and we have Venus in Aquarius at this point on late 27th Friday into early 28th Saturday. That Venus in Aquarius will make a square aspect to the volatile, unpredictable, rabble-rousing, revolutionary planet that is Uranus. And these two square off. And for Venus in Aquarius, I think they're used to this kind of thing. For those who have any planets at card or fixed signs between 21 to, let's say, 24 degrees, you're affected by this. You got to be careful about your finances. Venus likes to spend money, the aesthetics, the senses, relationships, love, the space that's needed. Uranus and Taurus here kind of throws its lightning bolt on this and shakes up Venus in Aquarius, which again, I think can handle it for the most part, right? But all you have to do is look to the Aquarius part of your chart and to the Taurus parts of your chart and see what houses they're in and how they're relating to each other. So that happens there the 27th into the 28th. When we get into the 29th, something I mentioned earlier in this video was a smaller story, or not a small story, but a story in the background is Chiron in Aries moving forward and not retrograde anymore. And it's within weeks here that the North and South node, Aries and Libra, will leave those places and will enter in the Piscean Virgo realm. Okay, so I didn't show you charts here, but let me do something really quick, as I will. I just want to show you something here, and I'll pull it up really quick, and I'll tell you about some side notes that I have going on project-wise. But here is the Jupiter Saturn Square, and I'll just show you here. In this case, this is just a world chart. Here we have Saturn at 14 degrees and Jupiter at 14. Again, you're a mutable person and you have anything close to these degrees, I bet you have some stories. If you are trying to navigate situations like this, which can be very hard when Saturn's involved, you let me know. You can always book a reading with me. That's my life, one-on-one sessions. You can hit me up, so on and so forth. You could do that. All right, so there's that chart there. See, I only did one chart today. This is good. Saying that, I want to end this video. I want to thank everyone who supported my channel this year and that have come on my live streams, that have messaged me, have booked sessions with me, who have supported me in whatever ways. I'm active on Instagram. You can always go to my copy here. You can follow me on Instagram and Threads. That's where I'm posting a lot these days. And I'm working here in the background on some videos for you. Besides that, I'm been very contemplative the last 24 hours making this video, thinking about the past year astrologically and all the political events and all the clients that I've had and everything that I've heard and friends and colleagues and where I've traveled. So much has happened to the world, but so much has happened to me personally. And I'm lucky and I'm grateful. So thank you. And if you're new here, please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell to know when I go live. Hint, hint, because I love to do surprise live streams. Hint, hint. And that's what's up. If you go back to my last live stream or whatever, I actually have a coupon code for readings there. You can go look in the copy there, and that's going until December 31st. I'll drop it here in this copy too, I guess. I won't make you work too hard during the holidays because you got cookies to make and food to eat and bottles of drink and all that stuff and family dramas and traveling and all these things, for better or worse. I wish health and happiness, okay, for you, and merry and happy solstice to all of you out there.